Hello, everybody. My name is William, and today I will be giving my presentation on marine ecosystem deterioration, the problems associated with it, and how my solution can fix those problems. So, what is marine ecosystem deterioration? So, we can also say habitat loss, just to make it shorter, and since marine ecosystem deterioration is a mouthful. But this habitat loss is when the ecosystems have been degraded to such a point where the organisms they cannot reside there. It's uninhabitable, which means there's no production and a bunch of other butterfly effects come from that. And so to know how to fix this, we have to know the causes. And so the causes can be divided into two camps. You got your direct causes and then you have your indirect causes. So I'll start with direct causes. So direct causes, the definition I put down is very ambiguous because it's really hard to explain, but I put down that it impacts the destruction of ecosystems directly. So maybe an example will help. So I put down that in 2019, in my home state of Florida, the University of Miami wrote an article about how dredging in the port of Miami, and if you didn't know, dredging is when sediment and debris is removed from the bottom of bodies of water like channels, usually so ships can pass through more comfortably. But this dredging project killed 90% or buried 90% of the nearby coral reefs, killing half of the coral in just a 550-yard radius, which is extremely bad, as you will find out. And so, direct causes are usually physical, like you're actually destroying the coral right then and there. So, mining, underwater construction, aquaculture are all direct causes. So, indirect causes, these are the opposite of direct causes because you're not physically destroying the ecosystem right then and there, like with mining or dredging, but they're just simple processes that caused by something that eventually can lead to the habitat becoming vulnerable and thus its destruction. So, for example, carbon emissions. As more and more carbon gets pumped out into the atmosphere, temperatures will rise. The ocean's pH will also technically lower or higher. It's going to be more acidic. And this will cause stress on the coral reefs. And when these coral are stressed, they expel zooxanthellae, which is a phytoplankton that's vital for their survival. And that'll eventually lead to a bleached look for the coral. They'll become white and then they'll die. So, overfishing, pollution, burning, carbon, greenhouse gases, all of this will eventually lead to slowly to the destruction of coral reefs. So these causes they have consequences. So one of the consequences is the quality of life of certain communities and even communities that aren't even near the coast. They're put in jeopardy. So one example of this is the melting of ice in the Arctic Ocean. We never really think about it because we don't live in the Arctic, or most people don't. But when the ice melts, this causes sea levels to rise. And since 1900, the ocean has risen 7 to 8 feet. That is scary to think about. And that causes coastal communities like the one where I live near, Daytona Beach, to be in jeopardy of flooding and constant flooding. And permafrost also in that region causes pathogens that we don't never been exposed to that can lead to more problems. Methane released in the atmosphere, greenhouse gases, that causes temperatures to rise. Again, it's just a continuous cycle because of the destruction of some of these ecosystems. So, besides the quality of life, which is very evident, surprisingly, marine ecosystems play a huge part on the economy as well. I mean, just coral reefs, for example, they provide food, source of money, protection to over 500 million people. That's a 16th of the Earth's population. And due to reefs also being a source of food, as mentioned, medicine, money through ecotourism and protecting the coastlines, they have a net economic value of over 10 billion US dollars. That is a lot of money. And without them, and as they're continuing to be destroyed, not right now, but in the future, this destruction can have huge impacts on the economy. So luckily, people have noticed the problems that destruction of these habitats can cause. So laws and regulations have put in place to stop and prevent further destruction and to restore some ecosystems. So acts like the Coral Conservation Act or the Endangered Species Act are good ways, along with the National Environmental Policy Act and this one, the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act. A mouthful, but they are all related to species and ecosystems to fight deterioration as root causes. However, these regulations, it doesn't seem like they're fully working. So is it enough to prevent further destruction, or is it even too much? So some drawbacks with this conservation. First off, I want to note that nobody's against conservation. We all want to see the earth be healthy, and we don't want to see it get destroyed. But sometimes these regulations can be a little harmful to us, like for marine protective areas. Um, yes, they're trying to protect biodiversity and the fish, but this can also impact human well-being. Like in a study from the University of Victoria, they found out that 30% of these MPAs have a negative impact on human well-being. And this is because the fishing trips are lengthened, where fishermen used to fish there, and this causes more tension. So some MPAs are actually helpful, but if they have to be done in a certain way, which some of the MPAs don't do this. So, for example, I went on a fishing trip, deep sea fishing trip in July of 2023, and one thing I noticed was how hard it was to catch a fish because there were many sharks around. They were breaking the lines and eating at the catches. So the captain mentioned how due to protection laws and how protected sharks are, there's so many of them that it makes it hard for his business to take off because they can't really catch any fish. So because of this, the ecotourism industry and fishing as well has declined because of these conservation efforts. So here's how I will fix this. First off, I'll make conservation my main priority still number one, but I want to ensure economic growth stability. So, for example, MPAs. I have noticed, or there was this in the University of Victoria study, it said that the most successful MPAs usually only have single non-fishing zones and have a lot of enforcement. So I will employ that, removing some zones, but have more regulations in those zones. Also, fish like sharks. They have very strict laws where you can only get a couple sharks, and you can only get like two of them at a time. There should be less regulations. Also, for habitats, I believe that sometimes it is necessary for bigger projects that you're going to have to destroy some ecosystems. However, they should be kept at a minimum. You should have permits, and there's only a certain amount of things you can destroy. And if you go over that, very strict regulations, fines, and consequences should follow. So why this solution is the best one? This solution is going to have balance. It's going to remove everything that the Conservation Act's got wrong while keeping its strengths, ensuring that though conservation is important, we can't fully dive into the conservation. We need to take baby steps to progress towards restoration to make sure the economy is good in the long term as well as the short term. So to summarize, marine habitat destruction is a major problem and can affect the well-being of people animals all across the globe. And so conservation efforts have been made and are important to stop further damage, but at the same time, some of these conservation efforts can hurt the economy. And so with my plan, I want to make sure to have a good balance between conservation, protecting the ecosystems while being able to progress and modernize the economy as well. Thus, balance is key for my plan. So I thank you for watching my video, and I hope you have a blessed day or night. Thank you.